Hi, everybody. Just a few player health updates to start camp. There will be a few guys that I think will be a little slower to get into game action in camp because of some off-season happenings. First of all, Dylan Tate in a November workout suffered a little bit of a flexor forearm strain. He's doing very well, but will not be appearing in grapefruit action until very late, if at all, and he will almost certainly start the season on the IL and miss most of, if not all of April, but we expect him back towards the end of April or the early part of May at this point in time, and that's going well. Also, Felix Bautista, he ended the season on the IL with the knee sprain. We've had him in rehab mode basically all winter for that knee and also on a shoulder strengthening program. That's going very well. He's throwing off a mound right now, throwing bullpens and looking good, but will be a little bit later into getting into real Grapefruit League games than the normal player might be. And he could be able to break for opening day depending on how much of a ramp up we're able to get him. DL Hall had some right lower lumbar discomfort about 3 weeks ago in his off-season training. That's resolving, if not resolved, but it's put him a little bit behind in terms of the buildup. We're going to have him on a starter buildup, which takes a little bit longer. So he may be a little bit later into getting into Grapefruit League games as well. And then, of course, Nick Vespi had the hernia surgery. That'll put him a little bit behind getting into Grapefruit League games. I do think we'll see him in some. It's TBD whether he would be in availability for opening day, but it's definitely possible. We'll just kind of have to see how the spring goes. But other than that, as of this time, basically everyone else is on a normal schedule, and I'm sure we'll have changes to that as we go along like we always do.
How much concerns there just for the bullpen overall with those guys being bullpen arms?
Well, it's I think bringing Givens in, especially from the right side, will help mitigate the loss of Tate in April. But it's concerning that one of our better relievers is not going to be on the opening day roster. I know he's bummed about missing the WBC and that, but he's doing well. I mean, he's a pitcher. Injuries happen. This shouldn't last too long.
What about poor old Elias? He was listed as playing in the WBC. And was not. And what do you know the reason to that?
I can't speak to the selections. It's not really any of our business, but he's healthy. He's going to be a normal guy here in camp, so he's doing well. Hyder and I just sat down with him yesterday. He knows that the plan is for him to play a little bit more second base than he did last year, but he'll be at third base half the time as well, and he's going to get a ton of playing time.
Means is that he was going to go off the half mound next week. Is that still the plan?
I don't know the specifics of that. I just know his Tommy John rehab's going great, and still projecting him for July's kind of the over/under on rejoining the team.
Is everybody here who was supposed to be here was supposed to report?
Yeah, no visa issues that I'm aware of so far. Obviously we don't have the position players in house or all of them, but we're starting to get a real good group trickling in.
With Felix, will there be your gradual build-up
To the point where he'll be in his 8th and 9th inning roles towards the end of the spring, do you think?
Yes, and at this point in time, unless something happens, but with where he is now, how he's looking and feeling, I think it's just going to be a question of how many spring training outings do we think he needs to be declared ready to go close out American League East games in April. But he's healthy. It's put him behind in terms of schedule and how many real spring training games he projects to get at this point. He's behind a normal schedule.
Like you've noted several times, the goal for this season is to make the playoffs. Some of those projection systems have come out and can see regression. Sports folks kind of see the same thing. Is what you guys have internally a little more bullish about your guys' chances?
Yeah, I think those are lower than I would expect to see. I think that's the nature of it. You kind of tend to have some in-house bias, so to speak, on your own players with any kind of projections, because you're acquiring and keeping those players for those reasons. But we really like this team, and it's going to be a dogfight. I know that, but I think we got a good shot to get into the playoffs this year, and we're going for that.
Does anything change in how you do spring training when you're in this mode? I mean, do you try to get the starting nine a little bit figured out earlier in camp? I mean, does anything change in that aspect?
I think that's something that I yield to Brendan on getting guys ready for the season who are established. Something I think he's good at, and I'll yield to their plans there. I do see 3 bench competitions right now, 3 bench spots that you could see a bunch of different ways going, or I should say 3 position player roster spots that there's not somebody who's really got their name on it right now. And on the pitching side, obviously, there's a rotation competition and then a few spots in the bullpen. So to me, it's been 8 or 9 roster spots that really don't have somebody with a firm grip on the job right now. So I think that's a pretty healthy competition in camp for a team that has its starting lineup somewhat penciled out.
You talked about potentially 12 starters for those 5 spots in a competition type thing. With tape out, would you consider like maybe
concentrating 1 or 2 of those guys specifically in the bullpen now? Is that going to change at all?
It's definitely possible. I think it depends on the guy. I think one thing that we're going to have to be mindful of is if one of our better pitchers, one of our better starting pitchers doesn't make the opening day rotation of 5, and would be a clear help out of the bullpen, do we want to shortchange that guy's starting career or risk jeopardizing it by compressing them into a bullpen role just to help the early season 2023 team when they could be continuing their development as a starting pitcher? So I think we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it, because those are not easy decisions and they're best made with the context of everything else going on. But that's, I think, something to keep in mind. Like, we won't just take some of our best starters and turn them into relievers just for the short term fix, or at least we won't do it without being thoughtful about it.
Mikey?
When you talked to us last couple weeks ago, you said you were continuing to engage with free agents and with other general managers. Is that still the case, or is this the team that you're going to look at this?
No, it is the case. I can't handicap it. Obviously the list is dwindling, but there are still free agents and those that I would classify as legitimate major league free agents that we're pursuing. I just don't know what's going to happen at this point.
Mike, you touched on it at the Caravan, but how nice is it to have a spring where you're worried about roster spots and things like that versus a pandemic, coming out of a lockout and getting guys ramped up? Just how nice is it to have a normal spring training get going?
Yeah, I was joking all winter that unless we get attacked by aliens, we should have a normal spring training. Looks like we can't totally rule that out at this point, unfortunately, but we're all very happy to be here. It's nice to have the lengthy spring training calendar. It feels like we haven't had that in a while. This is a little more leisurely pace leading up to games, which is great. And characteristically excellent Sarasota weather and vibes so far. So, it's hard to understate, I think, how happy we are all to have that stuff behind us.
to follow up on that, the depth of this roster now? Is it kind of where you want, and is it the deepest roster you brought this spring?
Yeah, I think so. Last year's team was a good team. We just didn't know how good some of those guys were going to be. We have more hopes, and I think that I think depth in particular with the free agent signings, with the farm system sort of starting to push up into AAA, we feel really good about our depth in most areas. But that said, we've got some really good players that are going to be at the top or in the middle of the lineup, and if one of them gets hurt, we're definitely going to feel it. But I think that the depth in competition is definitely as good or better than it's as the best it's been since we've been here.
You talked a lot about Veranda. This is getting more attention now. Certainly nationally, the team moved past the rebuild. You've always said he's the guy for you all along. We know he's working on, like last we heard, the option here was contracted. Are you able to shed any light on whether anything has changed with that?
It's an area that, for better or for worse, I don't believe it's in the club's interests, anyone's working here's interest to know the expiration dates on the contracts of our baseball ops employees. That includes him. I think that you can look at the job that we've done rebuilding this team, and I know he and I are very proud of it. Obviously, we have a outstanding working relationship so far that's been very successful in my opinion and productive for the team. And I think that people are, for better or worse, going to have to get used to he and I here for a while. So I think we're going to have a lot of success going forward. He's done a great job, and I was glad to see him get some recognition last year. And I'm also very proud of the fact that as maybe the first time in recent baseball history, we've had the same manager from the beginning of a rebuild through the point of the competition. And I think that says a lot, and something that he doesn't get enough credit for.
I guess we can presume that you're not going to talk about your contract status either. Huh? That's fair to say.
That wouldn't be a question for me, in the same way that I'm sure Brandon or our coaches would defer to me on theirs. It's not something that I feel is my business to go popping off about. But we're very committed to this project with the Orioles. I've said before, it's kind of personal for me, growing up in the area, to see the health of this franchise persist and blossom in the future. And I'm really proud to be here, and proud of the way that it's going.
What's a year from now? Was everybody's often say we're.
Well, again, that's not up to me either. So I certainly expect that to be the case. But this is a tough racket, and I don't take anything for granted in this gig or this line of work. That the changes happen up and down organizations all the time. I think that the management team that's here, this has been a really hard job. We inherited a lot of problems. We've been working through them. They're very big global problems, but also big issues with the baseball operation when we came in. And I think nothing was going perfectly. It never does, but this has really gone about as well as I could have hoped since starting, especially with a pandemic layered in there and a labor stoppage. And I think this group is really equipped to be the ones to lead us to the playoffs and beyond. So I hope that's how it plays out.
You mentioned, Brandon, seeing this rebuild through. You're returning the whole coaching staff with one addition. The minor league staffs have a lot of consistency. In baseball ops, there's been a lot of consistency. Just how proud are you of that aspect of this organization, that you guys have been able to kind of get a core group together and keep it that way?
That's nice. I mean, look, it's not something that we're proud of for its own sake. We're constantly trying to keep the organization competitive and structured properly, and that involves changes year to year in sports for better or worse. But I think the fact that that group is by and large returning almost 100% speaks to what we see as having the right people in the right place at this point in time and across these couple of seasons. And hopefully we'll all continue to earn that stability going forward.
When you talk about hope, does it feel different, like when you walk in this clubhouse this year compared to previous seasons? Is it tangible, something that you can feel the excitement of what this group might be able to do at the onset of this?
I think I see the depth and the some bigger names and things like that. But I might not be the person to ask about that. I think the players would be able to speak better. I have been very cognizant of what we're doing every single year, and knowing that there's a purpose to it. Regardless of whether we thought we had a really good chance of making the playoffs like we do this year versus 2019 when we didn't think we had a good chance and we didn't have a good chance. So I try to kind of keep an even keel, but it is fun seeing some of the faces and names bouncing around in there right now. It'll feel even better here in a couple of days when the position players come in.
How beneficial is it to have some of the prospects, a guy like Jackson Holidays, in this atmosphere, just being around the veteran guys early in camp?
Yeah, we talked about it with him because, when you take a high school kid with the first couple picks in the draft, they don't actually, probably unusual for them to come to Major League Spring Training, but we thought he could handle it. We thought he was ready for it. He had a really good debut, and Did well in A-ball, and seems to be a very mature kid. So we thought it would be a good experience for him, even though that's not the norm like it is for a college player. So I'm happy that he's here. And I got to say that it's been really fun watching infield drills so far the first couple days and mixing in with that group. It's a really talented group of guys going through the infield motions right now.